Chris, I think I've started itch something on you.
Good morning, Baroness Fear, and good morning, Stephen. With the greatest respect, I don't think we're trying to create any divisions whatsoever. We're just asking for the facts without showing any opinion, whether it's good or bad. And I think we're asking if you can provide that information. I think it's as objective as that. You said, Stephen, a moment ago that the successful bids that you have reviewed, you can generally tell, or through the dialogue, whether or not consultants have been involved. So I think what we're asking is there a problem where you can't share that with us?
So it's very much a sort of subjective issue, and I think what we were looking for was not have consultants been involved, but is this a plan that the local authority owns?
I'm sorry, with the greatest respect, that's not the question. The question is, are you able to provide that information to us?
No.
Okay. So could you then tell us what were the objective measures that you used in this process? Because I understand very much that your opinion, Baroness Fear, is that the bus strategy is working, but it's not working for rural England at the moment. It's not working for Dorset. And when we have feedback which consists of 290 words and uses language such as, we felt that this could have been better, we felt that the interventions related could have included more detail, there is a complete lack of objective measure. And I wondered if you could tell us what the objective measures were, if you can't tell us about that consultant situation. Stephen, I was asking you, but I don't know whether you prefer to answer.
Oh, well, I mean, yes, absolutely. We set it out very clearly in the guidance.
What are they?
Well, I don't...
Because we can't find that. Because I don't know whether I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected by my colleagues, but I can't find anywhere what the objective measures are. The operators that have previously given evidence to this committee have also fed back the same thing. And I think the local authorities have also done so. And I think what that's left is an impression, whether that's right or not, that this has been, to quote the word used, a subjective exercise that organisations and local authorities that have been in desperate need of trying to improve their bus services are not able to understand why they haven't been successful.
If I may come in on that, Minister, I mean, the criteria we applied were absolutely lifted from the guidance. So there were about 7 key things. If I sort of paraphrase, they were probably listed as about 9 or 10. That there was looking for services on key corridors and that being addressed. There was significant increases in bus priority where it was needed, which won't always be the case in a rural context, or an explanation of why not. There was lower, simpler fares and better ticketing. There was better information and better coordinated information across the different operators and overall. There was better connections across modes. And there was decarbonisation and the passenger benefits. And then alongside that, we're also looking for the requirement we put in for 80% support from operators or an explanation as to why not. So they were the things we were looking for.
Thank you. And just before I hand back to the Chairman, could you therefore explain to us why you have not been able to feed back to the local authorities how they have performed against those criteria? Because the examples I have in front of me basically, frankly, are full of subjective nonsense, and it doesn't give, and I'm very happy to pass it to you if you'd like to look at it, it doesn't contain any objective feedback against those criteria. Now, I think I would like to know why that is.
So, to just build on my point, they were the 8 or 9 things we were looking for.
Yeah.
We then took those and we looked at them against the strategic fit. So essentially, does it cover all those bases? Is there a clear target?
That's wonderful, but I'm asking, the question is, why have you not objectively fed back to the local authorities how they have performed against those individual objectives?
So effectively we have. If local authorities want to know...
The evidence is very clearly here, you have not. And I'm very happy to show it to you if you like. This is one example, Mr Chairman, of 290 words that have been sent to Dorset Council, and I think we've had others as well. We had Buckinghamshire Council in front of us a few weeks ago, and they at that point hadn't even had their feedback, and this, I'm afraid, was only as a result of having escalated it to an MP and minister level that we achieved this. It does not contain what you're suggesting, Mr. Fiddler. So I wondered if you could just help us again with telling us why have the local authorities not received the objective feedback against those criteria?
I think because that's what the Minister was saying before. We have individual sort of rankings and scores against it, every single bit of it, which we're very happy to share with an authority that wants to get into that level of detail. But what we've tried to do is to give the authorities the high-level view of where we thought that there was need for improvement. And it's the beginning of a conversation. It's not the end of it. We are in regular contact. We are very happy to go into much more detail with any authority
just
that
for the
wishes
record,
to do
I'm
so.
just about to hand back, Mr. Chairman. Will you commit here today to provide that objective feedback to every single local authority that has asked for it?
Absolutely, because we already have done. We've said we have a detailed conversation.
So I think that's where Chris raises the point, and we've heard it all the way through this inquiry. I mean, if you're going to provide the funding and encourage local transport authorities to bid, and they're not successful, then surely, in a very similar way that the Department for Levelling Up did with my district council when they didn't get a bid successfully put through for the Levelling Up Fund, they had a conference call with them, talked them all the way through the bid and said, this is where it didn't work, next time this... Why wouldn't you give them that offer?
So Levelling Up
Not
Fund,
a letter, like Chris has just pointed out. I mean, that's...
So Levelling Up Fund is on my patch as well. We're effectively following the same process. The first thing we did was give some high-level feedback like that in the Levelling Up Fund context, and then we offered the conversation to anybody who wanted it. Had exactly that conversation, and we're very, very happy to have it.
Sorry, but that's
Chris's
so
point
wrong. That is so incorrect. We have for months, weeks and months, almost had to beg the department to get feedback for a failed bid, which we still cannot understand in Dorset why that bid was not successful, other than 290 words of subjective nonsense. And all we're asking for is an objective feedback that tells exactly against the criteria you have measured these bids against where we have not met the required standard. And that is not something that the local authorities have either received nor have been offered up until today.
That's not the case.
I'm sorry, that's completely wrong.
Well, obviously, Mr. Loder, we've had the conversation about Dorset, and I've met your council, and I've met
Indeed,
lots
several times
of councils. But it's not right to say, just because you have, I understand, obviously, your interest is in Dorset, it is not the same that of saying, well, all local authorities haven't had it. What we might do to those 290 words, we could phrase them differently. There is an element. No, because
I suppose just to kind of bring this to a conclusion, perhaps it would be sensible for us to ask you if you would reach out to all of the local transport authorities who've not been successful and ask them if they want a session so they can understand and ask questions as to why their bid has not been successful. I would just expect that as usual practice. Is that something that you would consider?
We've already done that, but we will obviously do so again and confirm to you that we have done so.
When we had Buckinghamshire Council here just a few weeks ago, they were in a worse situation than Dorset. They had asked for feedback. They'd not even able to get a response.
Yeah, that is absolutely the case.
That may have changed since, and I appreciate that may have changed since. But would you then provide us with the objective feedback for each of those councils so we can see that as well, if you've provided it?
I'd be happy if you were.
I think what I'd suggest is if you write to us and let us know every single local transport authority that's not been successful and all of those that you've written to and also offered and had a meeting with in order to give them proper feedback as to why they weren't successful. That might be a way of moving it forward.
And if I can just clarify on dates and the process we followed, if it's helpful for the committee, we deliberately prioritised those people who were looking to get their EPs away and to get the funding away, and we dedicated our resources to where we thought the urgent priority was, which was helping those that were successful get this implemented as quickly as possible. Taking the point from earlier, BSIPs are long term, so we aim to get the initial feedback out to everybody who'd got funding by the 13th of May, and then by the end of May, or indeed I think some slip to the 1st of June, to everybody else in a sort of second round in the next 2 weeks. So I apologise, it meant that some people felt there was a bit of radio silence, but I personally thought that was probably the right priority order to do it in.
Okay, well, it may well be that when we heard the evidence since then, you've actually done what we've mentioned, but if you can write to us, then that will obviously clarify it anyway. Let's move on to the bus service operators grant before we go through parts of the strategy, because we're keen to ask you about the reform of that.